So in this video, I'm going to talk you through the different strategies that you can get started in property if you're only sat there with 10K. 10K is a lot of money, but it's still not going to get you a huge amount of property. So you've got to be quite strategic about how you're going to deploy it. And the good news for you is that property is a system. It's a step-by-step process. So once you can rinse and repeat, take that 10K, you're going to be able to grow it. And that's what we're going to cover today. So lovely to meet you if this is your very first time on my YouTube channel or on one of my videos. I'm Susannah Cole. I run the Good Property Company. We did over £45 million worth of property, sourced for only good 30 million quid. So we got a bit of experience in property, loads of flips, loads of joint ventures. I've built a significantly large property portfolio, which allows me just to be happy, alive, you know. I'm in Barcelona at the moment. I live partly in Barcelona, bought for cash, 9 minutes from the sea, and also in Bristol. And that's really the power of property. And I started also with very little money, and we're going to cover those step-by-step processes of what I would suggest you do if you've got 10K in property starting now. So my YouTube channel is all about helping you succeed in property. So if you haven't already, you might want to like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on any videos. I've got a lot of videos planned for you. I'm really excited about the program I've laid out, ready to deliver. And also have a good look at the Good Property Company, thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. I've put together really good quality pieces of education, downloadable checklist packs, 60-day academies. You've got webinars you can listen to straight away, all on my website. So really well worth you going over and having a good look there. And that is thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. Really, really good property website to keep you motivated, to keep you confident, to grow your skills, for you to succeed in property. Right. What would you do if you had 10K to invest in property? Ready? So I'm going to guess that what your goal is that classic financial freedom, living life on your terms, leaving the 9 to 5, having property assets that ultimately pay your salary, not even a salary, pay your bills, pay your living expenses, so that you have complete choice over your life. And maybe it's about generational wealth as well. Now, let me be quite frank, 10K is not going to get you there. Okay, not on its own. So we've got to do a kind of twofold strategy. We've got to take that 10K and make it into 15, 20, 30, 40, 50. And then we have to do stage 2, which is take that large amount of money, put it into a property portfolio, because that is the thing that's going to allow you the passive income, the living life on your terms, the no longer your hands being tied to an hourly rate for money. Okay, so it's a two-pronged strategy because you're sitting with 10K, because as we both know, 10K is not going to buy you a house these days. Now, I have done a lot of videos about how you can source deals, how you can find discounted deals, auctions. There's a whole series on auctions. So in this video today, we're going to concentrate on the first stage, which is how do you take that 10 grand and build it into 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, because there are loads of other videos you can watch on how to actually, once you've built the pot to 50, 100 grand, how you can actually buy a discounted deal. Let's concentrate on the growth stage so you move from 10K to being able to seriously invest in property, all right? Now, as you probably know, I mean, wouldn't it be lovely if it was otherwise? But it's not. Property's not a get-rich-quick business. And anybody who tells you otherwise, just walk away very quickly, yeah? Property is a get-wealthy-steadily business. It's kind of the compound interest, isn't it? And if you've read the book already, if you haven't, high recommendation. It's kind of the book that most people start on. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. He talks about, are you employed? Self-employed, so this is on the one side of the quadrant, where you're basically swapping time for money. Are you then a business owner that you've created a system, but you're still having to work in it? Or are you an investor? So you've got your quadrants: employed, self-employed, business owner, and investor. The only quadrant that is the financial freedom is the fourth one, the property investor. And we want to move you from either employed or self-employed over to the other side, to that quadrant, to that financial freedom, to leaving the 9 to 5, to managing life on your terms. And we're going to talk about building that 10K up to be able to do so. And this video is also going to help you avoid the blind alleys, avoid the mistakes, avoid the kind of tantalizingly, teasingly, oh, but they don't actually work strategies that are laid out for you by people who, I don't know, selling you courses. Because I'm old school. I'm that fourth quadrant investor. I live here in Barcelona. It's my flat in Barcelona. The sea is 9 minutes away. You may hear a knock on the door because I've got a dear friend about to visit me from England. And we're going to go to a bodega and we're going to go to the sea tonight. And she's just going to chill out. It's going to be gorgeous. I live in that quadrant and I want you to get to that place as well, okay? I think in the long run, where I want you to get to, you're not there now, but you will get there, is I want you to have always 6 figures in the bank. I do. It's a safety net. I want you to have houses paid off. I do, like this one, and others. It's a safety net. I want you to have the financial security that means should you not need to work, and I had a period about 18 months where I just didn't do any work at all, nothing changes. There's no financial difficulty at all. That is the old school area we're getting you to, okay? Which means assets paying bills. So none of this rent to rent stuff, but we'll get onto that. So first thing first, set some money aside for your education. Not an enormous amount of the 10K, but maximum 10%. This will fund a number of things. Probably an online course or two, or a course with somebody, right? But do your due diligence and take your time to make sure they're right. They do what they say on the tin. They're just not full of shiny penny, exciting, sexy marketing stuff, okay? They've been in the trenches. The other thing it will do, and this is really important, is this will help you pay to go to property events. Now there's probably about 70 or 80 property events happen every month throughout the country. I used to do 2 in Bristol and 2 in London. They were worth traveling for. I mean, I'd get home at like 1 in the morning, and have to go to work the next day. Like, whoa, but my goodness, they're worth traveling for. Yes, the speakers are good, but most importantly, it's the people you meet in the room. So you'll need, I don't know, normally about 20 quid a ticket, and you'll need some petrol money or some train money or whatever. I mean, early days, I earned my stripes. I drove home that night. These days, obviously, I'd stay in a hotel. I'm not going to drive home at like 2 in the morning. But in the early days, you're probably eating a sarnie and a Kit Kat and going to a property event. The quality of the people you meet in the room are the quality of your peers. You're going to know them in 15 years' time. You're going to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, can I borrow some money? Hey, do you want this deal? I cannot emphasize enough building your network, which is going to property events. And of course, choosing some good quality education to go, right, I've got a foundation. I understand the principles. I've been educated so I can mitigate the risks, and I know my strategy. I'm going to move forward, whether it's flipping or deal sourcing or deal packaging or whatever it is you want to achieve. Nobody went to the Olympics without a coach. I certainly had a property mentor for a long time. I advocate education, but do your due diligence first. Make sure it's the right person. And now you've set aside 10%, 1 grand, you've got 9 grand. Sorry, but it's probably good for you. So let's talk about what not to do. Do not do rent to rent. I do other videos about why I don't think rent to rent in the long run is a good idea. It sounds super tantalizing, particularly when you're in a position that you've got 9 grand to spend. No, it's a fool's alley. And I don't mean that if you're doing rent to rent, please don't think I've just called you a fool. It's hard work. You have all the downside. You have to pay the rent whether the tenants pay you or not. You have to pay the rent whether you've got any tenants or not. You have to pay the rent even if the tenants trash the place and you've got to put it back. And the landlord just sits there, gets paid the rent, and enjoys the capital gains. And in the meantime, not only have you committed to giving all your downside, but none of the upside being the capital growth, you're also now basically being a glorified letting agent. And did you try and leave the 9 to 5 by getting into the 9 to 5? What? So rent to rent as a glorified letting agent often sucks up too much time. It means that you don't have enough time to find deals and find investors. Massive no for me, please. Do not get tempted, even though it feels like an easy way to get into property. In my strong opinion, and if I thought it was a good thing, I would tell you it was a good thing. In my strong opinion, it's a blind alley. Make sure that you stay confident enough to know that you want to be getting into property, to own your own properties, not being a glorified letting agent for somebody else, right? So that's what not to do. The second one might be to your taste, might not. Flip a cheap property. I have a friend who not that so long ago, I don't advocate this, bought a house in South Wales for 18 grand on a credit card. Seriously, not even long ago. There are places, in some of the areas in the UK, there are places where you can still buy properties 18, 20, 25 grand. And of course, you've got £9,000, which is basically you want a 25 to 30% deposit for a bridging loan. So you potentially could get a loan and flip a very cheap property if you were buying it discounted and were able to renovate it. At this point, you're going to do something which I tell you not to do, but actually you'll have to do. You're probably going to have to do a heck of a lot of the painting yourself. Normally, I'm like, don't do that at all. But in this case, you're climbing up the ladder. So flip a cheap property in order to make some more money, to turn that money around. Now, you can find it in some of these areas where the properties are really cheap. Where are you going to sell it? Well, I actually think you've got three options here, and all of them are good. You can renovate it, or you don't even need to renovate it. My friend Paul used to just make them worse and then throw them back into auction if you found a deal in the first place. But normally you'd do a bit of renovation and you'd sell it back into auction. But you'd probably put the auction in London, because if you've bought it for like, I don't know, 40 grand and you're selling it for 80, somebody in London is going to feel that that is an absolute steal compared to the prices they've got in London, if the houses are genuinely worth about 80 in your local area. Second, you can sell it to a normal residential buyer. Probably my least favorite option in that location, because if it's that cheap, there aren't that many people buying for themselves. They're normally probably more rental, because if a property is that cheap, the economy behind it is a pretty tough economy. So my least favorite of that one. Or third, you can put a tenant in, because people in those communities want to stay in those communities, and then you can sell it as a package deal to a passive armchair landlord who's like, wow, you've bought the property, you've renovated it, you've put me a tenant in, all the paperwork is good. All I have to do is hand it to a letting agent, which you've probably already found them anyway, and I'll sit in my armchair in London or somewhere else. I'm thinking if you have the property in Wales, oh man, not only am I going to pay you money for the property, but I'm going to pay a little bit of a kind of additional fee because you've done all the work for me. Now that's a really nice option, isn't it? So flip a cheap property in somewhere like South Wales or up in Tynesides, those kind of locations. I actually like you flipping it back out into armchair landlords who want 5% return. Whole thing is done. They're happy. You're happy. Well done you. And you'll make good money, 20, 30 grand. But hang on this kind of budget where you literally don't have any more than your 9 grand, you can't afford to make mistakes. You definitely can't afford to buy a property that isn't worth what you think it is. So do 45 pieces of research, 20 sold, 20 in the market, and 5 estate agent opinions, and get fixed price contracts from really good builders, because you can't afford a cost overrun. So be very careful on managing this project. Don't go into it like willy-nilly. Go into it very, very detailed and very organized, because you haven't got the fluidity and the flexibility to have a 5 grand overrun, have you? So knowledge level on this strategy, buying a cheap property and flipping it, is probably 4 out of 5. You need to know how to source. You need to know how to manage builders. You need to know how to do renovations. If you're going to sell it with tenants in place, you need to know a bit about being a landlord and have all those legal information. So fairly knowledgeable strategy, really good one, make you money, but you definitely have to have the kind of education or the knowledge to be able to deliver it effectively and make that 20 or 30 grand extra. So now you're sat there with, say, 29 or 39 grand instead of 10. Nice. Either 3 times or 4 times more from one deal. The second thing you can do, again, this is taking a very cheap property. So I don't know, Stoke-on-Trent, Tyneside, South Wales, and you're going to take a 1 bed and you're going to turn it into a 2 bed. There's a lovely thing in Britain. We're all a bit nuts, aren't we? In Europe, like this is an apartment in Barcelona, they sell it on per square meter. So you don't get away with saying, well, it's got more bedrooms. No, it's still per square meter. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 bedroom or 5. It's per square meter. In Britain, we're a bit bananas. We value up properties based on how many bedrooms. It's illogical, but you can use it to your advantage. Take a lovely 1 bed house, which has a separate kitchen, decent sized kitchen, move the kitchen into the living room, kitchen diner, living room, and then turn the kitchen into a 2nd bedroom. So you've moved it from a 1 bed to a 2 bed, and then you can flip it out again. So straight away, you're going to make some good money. Now, what will you need to do? Ideally, you want to make sure you're not moving any load-bearing walls. You're definitely going to need building regs control because you're going to be moving probably gas, electricity, and certainly water because you're moving a kitchen. So again, skill level, probably 3 out of 5. You need to know about building control. You need to know about builders. You need to know about renovations. And again, you need to assess the property, don't you? But it's a fairly simple process. And if you use a commercial building control person, they will guide you through it all the way. I mean, so beautifully easy to do. So that is another strategy you can do in a low cost area to move your money from like 9 grand, and you might flip it out and make yourself 20 or 30 grand again, because of course you bought it discounted in the first place. Now, this option is my favorite option, and I'm super surprised that more people don't teach it or know about it or do it. It's something I've done myself with my own property, actually. Typically, this will be ex-council houses. And the reason for that is they tended to have really lovely big gardens, really good spacey houses. There was good value in what was made post World War II. Yeah. And what you'll find is people who, not everybody, of course, but who've bought a council house with a corner plot. That's what I'm getting at, or a very big garden to the side. And as they've gotten older, they've paid for the council house, great, but they may not have an amazing pension. I've definitely met lots of people like that. And so they've got a double whammy coming on. They've got a very limited pension, so that isn't super fun. There's not many holidays going to come out of that. And also, as they're getting older, they've got a massive garden that they've got to look after. Like whether it's flowers or whether it's pushing a lawnmower, it's just too much. So what you can do is go into joint ventures with the owners of these houses, which are typical ex-council, not always, but typically. And you identify corner plots and you say, look, I'll do the work, I'll take the financial risk, and we'll split the profit 50-50. Now, I made 75 grand. It took me a grand and a half to get outline planning permission to put a house in the garden. Oh my word, they were like, bum, bum, bum. They were biting my arm off to try and buy that plot, because plots at 75 to 100 grand, most people can afford them. Loads of builders want them. Loads of home builders want them as well. So you've got a massive market for them and very limited supply. The owner, so you don't put any money into buying the project. All you do is I spent a grand and a half, and that was including the application form for Bristol City Council. You work with your architect to get outline planning permission, you sell it as is, and then what happens is a split title. So the old house is split off from the garden. They're really happy. They don't have to look after this monster garden, and they get 50% of the profit. So like, I don't know, 40, 50, 60, 70 grand, depending on where you're at in the country. And the new people then build a house. New neighbours. And of course, these guys have met them because they sold them the land, so they know who they are. So they're not going to sell to somebody they don't like. Everybody wins. You spent £1,000 on education. You've now spent £1,500 to £2,500 on your architects. You've still got money. You've still got over 5 grand left. If you were to do that project again and again and again, and you made 50 grand a go, how many do you need to make £1 million? 20. Yeah, it's not many. I bet you can find 20 gardens in your local area. So, worthwhile subscribing to this YouTube channel. And remember, go over to my website, The Good Property Company. A really interesting strategy that nobody's teaching. Keep it under your hat. So, you would take an option out on the garden. So it's a legal agreement that says, I've got an option to be part of this, to buy it, or so it means that to be either buy it from you, or more likely, I've got an option to receive 50% of the profit. What it means is that you are effectively sort of protecting that land from you putting the planning permission on and then the homeowner going, I think I'll sell it to somebody else. So you would never start to get the planning permission from the architect until you've got a legal contract in place with the homeowner. That's you protected, that's them protected. Skill level, honestly, is coordination. You're not the architect. You don't need to understand, well, you need to understand a bit of planning, but not much. So your skill level is simply recruiting the homeowners who are fed up having a big garden and want a bigger pension. And you're recruiting the architect who knows how to put planning permission on a house and a garden. Well, how do you do that? Well, you go around the estate and you find other houses that have been put in gardens. You look up the planning portal of your local council, you find out who the architect was and you employ them. They've already done it. They'll just rinse and repeat. Skill level 2 out of 5. Profit margin, massive. 40, 50 grand every single go. Do 20 of them, that's £1 million cash. Keep it under your hat, like I said. Your next strategy, if you've got 10 grand, you've put £1 aside for education, is do an assisted sale with a seller. This could be somebody whose property just isn't selling, and they don't know why, and you do, or it's somebody that just can't handle that kind of just can't handle it, don't know how to sell it, very uncomfortable with the whole process. Usually you would spot a property that hasn't sold, identify yourself what you would do to make that property sell, and then talk to the vendor and say, look, if we do a deal, and you can do any kind of deal that works for you and works for the vendor, but if we do a deal, if I come in this, then we're going to split the profit X, Y, Z, and then anything over, if I get even more, then I'll take more of that profit because it was me that brought in the extra profit. So you might be great at marketing, you might be great at presentation, you might roll your sleeves up and totally refurb or totally decorate the property. You just might have identified the reason why they're not selling. You might have solved some legal problems that they've got with the property that they feel unable to solve. The reason you get discounted deals is there's a problem with the property or there's a problem with the legals. It's always one or the other. You can resolve it. Now, that is how much can you earn? Well, how much is a piece of string? It depends on the property. It depends on the sale. It depends on your agreement with the vendor. But an assisted sale, and one of my mentees, a brilliant guy called Sonny, and his wife did loads of those, and it was always a real win-win situation. And it's quite nice to hear how he'd done them and how he very much put both the benefit of the vendor, but the benefit of himself and the work he put in to earn really good money with very little cash going in. And that's how he built his property portfolio. So skill level there is probably a 4 out of 5. You're going to need a solicitor, you may need a builder, you may or may not need an architect. And your contract, what you'll do is you'll agree a contract, you'll agree the terms, you'll agree what work you're going to do, including any renovation work if needed, any painting work, any display work. You'll agree what work they're going to do, and you'll agree your split. So you'll need a lawyer for the lease, the assisted sale, the kind of lease option, and you'll also need a lawyer to get the property actually sold. And a lot of it is just running around and organising things that maybe the person has felt unable to organise. Oh man, next one is 100% what I would get you to do. But then it's easy to recommend what you've done yourself because you really know it works. Become a deal sourcer. Oh, honestly, look at my body language. I'm just smiling because this is exactly what I did. So what is a deal sourcer or a deal packager? You find a discounted deal, you find an investor, you put them together, you never buy the property, so that's fine, and they pay you a fee. Now, I used to charge 5%. And I used to get almost every single one of my deals sold within 30 to 60 seconds. I also used to charge my investors £1,000 a year to be part of my group, which was great for cash flow, but it also showed that they were committed. So I wasn't messing around with people who are just time wasters, tire kickers, none of that nonsense. And you can get paid very, very quickly, which is one of my favorite reasons. If you're starting with 10 grand, you've paid £1,000 out for education already. You've got 9 grand to go. Your compliance, you've got 4 bits of compliance you need to do. It's going to cost you around about £1,000, and you are good. In the first 3 months, in the first 12 weeks, I banked 16 grand in fees. I was an absolute beginner. So skill level here, probably a 3 out of 5, because you need to find discounted deals and you need to find investors. But frankly, do you want to buy a discounted deal 100 grand off? Yes, please. And finding deals, I've got loads of videos on that. It's simply a process, a step-by-step, simple one process. And so I'm not going to go into it at this point. You still got money left over and you get paid fast. The fastest I ever got paid was 4 days, but normally it's about 8 to 10 weeks before bringing a deal in to getting paid. You've got happy investors, you've got happy sellers, you've got happy estate agents. I got most of my deals from estate agents and auctions. And you've got very good lumps of cash coming in quickly. So if you find a deal at 500 grand How much are you going to be charging them at 5%? 25 grand. If you find a deal at 200 grand, that's 10 grand, guys. You know, we're not messing around here. Yeah? So how much can you earn as a deal packager? Well, I charged 5%. So it depends on the properties in your area. Let's just say the average property in your area was the average price, which is 300 grand. That's 15 grand a property. Are you going to do 5 a year? Maybe 75 grand. Are you going to do 10 a year? 150 grand. Our run rate was between 48 and 53 a year. Yeah. And then what we did was we said, okay, we're going to, you know, after the first couple of years, we were like, well, half of them we're going to do as deals and half of them was going to do as joint ventures, which we'll come on to next. So you choose your run rate, you choose how many deals you want to do, and then obviously you choose your percentage, but I tell you 5%. I used to sell all of them really quickly, and you charge your investors a fee to be part of your group. I loved being a deal packager. It was fun, it was exciting, it was fast moving. I got to hang out with really great people, kind of got my place at the table way before I had the money to be a property investor. And I took every penny I earned and put it back into a property portfolio. Financial freedom, Barcelona, life. 100% got my vote. Tick, become a deal packager, please, people. And very briefly, if you want to know where to get educated, I have a fantastic, I don't know any company that's done more deals than us in terms of deal packaging. They might have done, I might just not know them, but I've got a 60-day deal packager academy. It's just great. It's got everything we did to source 217 deals, 45 million quid's worth of property for 30 million quid. So it covers everything you need to know. So deal packaging, absolutely the way to go in my opinion, but I want to give you all the options as well. And then the next stage is it kind of moves you on joint venturing. So what does that mean? That means you find a house, you find an investor, the investor buys the house, you have a legal agreement, and the investor pays for the refurb, you do all the work, and then you split the profit 50-50. Very nice indeed. So you get paid more slowly because a flip will typically be about 6 months between purchase and payout, but you get paid really lovely big lump sums of cash, which is very nice indeed. And that can also come from a deal packaging business because you start as a deal packager and then you're like, okay, I'm going to do half deal packaging, half joint ventures. So skill level there, probably a 4 out of 5. You need to find discounted deals. You need to find investors. You need to be clear that you're going to flip. You need to be able to identify your marketplace. You need to be able to manage a refurb. You don't need to necessarily know about funding, but you definitely need to be able to kind of guide and assist your investor. And then you need to be very good at selling the property, even if you're going to get an estate agent to do it, because you always need to be on top of things. So maybe a 4 out of 5, but how much can you earn? Well, at one point we had 30 joint ventures happening at the same time. You can imagine how much that could bring in for you. Obviously, I don't suggest you go straight to that, but you might want to do like 4 a year. Very nice indeed. So let's just say you were selling them at an average 300,000. So each property is going to make 60 grand. So 4 times 60 grand is 240,000. You take home 50% of that, 120 grand. For 4 JVs, you put none of your own money in. What's the budget? Well, like I said, probably about £1,000 to go to property meetings, to meet all your investors, to do all your travel, to go to properties, to do all your viewings. 120 grand from £1,000 budget. Do you like these ideas? I hope you do, and I hope you're writing down loads of notes. You might even want to watch this video again, because this is all about what can you earn with a 10 grand budget. And I've given you a huge list so far with skill levels and what you can earn. So I have given you 6 different ways for you to take £10,000 and make it 50 grand, 100 grand, and then put it into your own property portfolio. And one warning on where not to go. So the blind alley is rent to rent for me, because it's not about you investing, not about you owning property. And then you can flip a super cheap property. You can turn a super cheap 1 bed into a 2 bed. You can joint venture and do an option on a garden and put outline planning permission and split that 50-50 with the person who owns it. You can become a deal packager. You can do an assisted sale, basically a joint venture with a person who's selling a property. And finally, you can do a joint venture with an investor and split the profit 50-50. 6 ways, one blind alley of how you can take £10,000, I'm so sorry, put 1,000 aside for education and use the 9 grand on these 6 different strategies. Do you see? There's always a solution. And remember, the goal for you is what? Financial freedom, leaving the 9 to 5, living life on your terms, 6-figure income, probably generational wealth, living life the way you want to. I want the goal to be that you have properties that you own fully outright and you have a property portfolio. But you've got to start somewhere. And so what I don't want you to do is go, I'll do all 6 of these. No. Pick one, get really good at it, rinse and repeat. Pick a second one after maybe a year, get really good at that, rinse and repeat. Maybe pick a third one, but to be fair, by year 3, you won't need these. But what I don't want you to do is scattergun and do all 6 of them. And when you get really good at one and then really good at a second, they will earn you enough money, a 6-figure income, that you can then buy property houses and retire from even those strategies. Yeah. So good luck to you. Remember, like and subscribe, because there are tons of really useful videos like this one on the YouTube channel. And also have a good look at my website. I've created a really packed education website for you. Everything immediately downloadable. It's thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. Really, really worth you going over and having a look. But the most important thing, no matter what kind of budget you've got, is there are proper, good quality property strategies that will move you far with different skill levels. That means that you can move into a 6-figure income and financial freedom, living life on your terms. And I'm sure that's where you want to get to. So you can do it. Good luck. If you want to keep up to date, because we've got tons of helpful information for you on how to make money in property, subscribe to my channel and turn your notifications on.